Allison, good morning. It certainly is the first time we've heard from former President Barack Obama about the consequences of his election and how he believes it led to a reaction in the country that ultimately led to President Donald Trump and Sarah Palin. He talks about her a lot as well. Let's look at a few of these excerpts we're looking at this morning. He talks directly about race when he says this. He said, "It was as if my very presence in the White House had triggered a deep-seated panic, a sense that the natural order had been disrupted," which is exactly what Donald Trump understood when he started peddling assertions that I had not been born in the United States and was thus an illegitimate president. For millions of Americans spooked by a black man in the White House, he promised an elixir for their racial anxiety. So again, the former president speaking directly about all of that birtherism, the talk we heard so much about that led to the rise, of course, of Donald Trump.
What does he say in there about Joe Biden and Joe Biden's, I don't know, chances, as well as his own pick of him as VP?
Allison, he does talk about his former vice president, his friend, his running mate, and he talks specifically about this. He said, "I like the fact that Joe would be more than ready to serve as president if something happened to me, and that it might reassure those who still worried I was too young. What mattered most, though, was that my gut told me that Joe was decent, honest, and loyal. I believe that he cared about ordinary people, and then when things got tough, I could trust him. I wouldn't be disappointed." And throughout the book, he also talks extensively about the decision-making and how he saw Joe Biden face-to-face during all of these moments. And they didn't obviously always agree either, so some interesting moments on that as well.
I mean, he couldn't have known when he was writing this just how chaotic this transition would be that we find ourselves in, but did he touch on the transition?
He did indeed. He talked about his transition to power specifically. And you're right, it is so prescient given the moments that we're living in right now. He says this, take a listen. "Whether because of his respect for the institution," he's talking about George W. Bush here, "lessons from his father, bad memories of his own transition, or just basic decency, President Bush would end up doing all he could to make the 11 weeks between my election and his departure go smoothly. I promised myself that when the time came, I would treat my successor the same way." So, Allison, this is so interesting. He talks about the first time that they met in the Oval Office, about how President Bush was so welcoming to him, about how Mrs. Bush was welcoming to Michelle Obama, and how the two daughters, Jenna and Barbara Bush, were welcoming to Malia and Sasha, showing them around the fun parts of the White House. So extraordinary given the week that we're living through right now.
Right. I mean, that is so important to think about as we live in this moment. Just the tone that the Bush family set, even though, they probably weren't happy with the outcome. They set that sort of gracious tone. Okay, how about, is there anything juicier there? Anything about Michelle? Anything about his marriage?
He does talk about his marriage, not surprisingly. Of course, we've already heard from Mrs. Obama in her book, Becoming, but this is the first time we have heard from the former president that I can recall, and I've been covering him really for about 15 years or so, since before he ran for office. This is what he says about Michelle Obama. Take a listen. He said, "Whether it was my round-the-clock absorption with work or the way politics exposed our family to scrutiny and attacks, or the tendency of even friends and family members to treat her role as secondary in importance. Lying next to Michelle in the dark, I'd think about those days when everything between us felt lighter, when her smile was more constant and our love less encumbered, and my heart would suddenly tighten at the thought that those days might not return." So he does talk about his marriage and the toll that being in the White House had taken on his marriage and his family life. So that perhaps is one of the most interesting parts of the book here, just specifically going in those deep personal terms. But Allison, overall, as you said, 768 pages, and this is just volume 1. We know he is a big writer, so he has not gotten to the end of the story, but this is a long time coming. He missed several deadlines, but it's coming out officially next week, Allison.